Introducing the new texture paint. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the changes that texture paint has undergone. Now, it comes in 2 bottles rather than 1. One of the unfortunate complaints that we were getting was that the texture paint can dry out a little bit faster than intended. So, to combat that, we are now offering it in the 2-part component. One part, you can see, is powder, and the second component will be your liquid component. Now, we do recommend mixing just what you need, but you can also just dump it all in and it will work out perfectly fine. It is equal by volume. So we have an 8-ounce container of powder and 8 ounces of liquid. You can see I put in the powder first and then the liquid. The liquid helps kind of soak in a little bit, and it just seems to work out a little bit better when you do this way. The other way, you can get in a little bit chunky and it's a little harder to mix it. So you may want to mix with a stir stick first to ensure that you get a little bit going, but overall you will want to get the drill on and get it going a little bit more. So you can see I go straight into the drill and I just start off real slow. You can see a little bit of that powder's coming up, but overall just go nice and slow. Make sure you have your dust respirator on, and once you mix it really nice and even together, you'll find that you get a perfect consistency, really. And it's what we intended, but like I said, it just kind of dried out a little bit faster than we wanted it to. So this is a great option for us. Here I kick it up a little bit more. If you find that you want yours, say, a little bit clumpier, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can either add less liquid. As you can see here, we have a nice creamy consistency. But if you want it drier or clumpier, you can add less liquid, so less of the liquid bottle, or you can just let it dry out a little bit. So if you leave it and it will air evaporate and dry out, then it will help combat that. If you need it a little bit more runny, either add less powder, or you can take a little bit of distilled water and add it to your liking. Now, texture paint is great for metal coatings. They really kind of build it up, and that's what their bread and butter is. So here I have a piece of MDF that I've already primed twice, and this is primed with our Prime It. And a lot of the times I will choose to do 1 coat of Prime It, 1 coat of texture paint, and then another coat of Prime It, because you want to do 2 coats of Prime It. And that really makes sure that it's locked in nice and good, and if the Prime It's adhering well to the texture paint, then the metal coating is going to follow suit and everything goes well. But really, you only need to worry about that if you go too thick. So if you don't go too thick on the texture paint, if you're just wanting a little bit of texture, you can skip that and go straight from Prime It to texture paint to metal coating. And that's what I'm going to do in this video here. So once I kind of texturize this up real nice, then we can move on. There are no wrong ways to apply the texture paint other than going on super thick. You don't want to go super thick. So I normally build up. So in this video, I will do 2 coats of texture paint, but you can roll it on, you can sponge it on. You know, spraying would be very difficult because it is rather thick. But if you brushed it on, stippled it on, there's really no way you could do this wrong. We've seen people go on with trowels and saran wrap and all sorts of fun things. I like to do a sponge, but because it can give me a randomness to it, and I kind of spin it in my hand so there's no single pattern which I need to worry about with a brush or other objects. The other thing that the sponge will do, and you'll see this when you stipple it on with a brush as well, is it can create ridges. And I didn't really want to have any ridges in this, so what I'm going to do here is take a little bit of distilled water and I'm just going to spray it down real light and quick. And what that does is it helps kind of make it so the ridges sink a little bit more. So you can just see I've got it in a little spray bottle, just a couple mists, and that will help kind of, it doesn't take the texture away, but it does help take those ridges, those pointy areas away. Now, the texture paint doesn't take long to dry in most climates, but I do like to give it 24 hours to make sure that we're going to get it completely dry and not trap any moisture underneath the metal coating. And if you need to, you can push that a little bit. You can give it a couple hours and dry it out as long as you've got the climate for it. If it's really cold, then you'll definitely want to wait a little bit longer. But if you just give it a couple hours, the texture paint will set up. Once again, one of those, as long as you don't go too thick situations. And here I'm going to just sponge on the Iron B, sticking with the sponge because it once again will give me some texture, and a lot of that texture is going to be already done with the texture paint. But instead of spraying it out, this is a great way to kind of get everything to blend in well so it doesn't look like you sponged on iron paint, essentially. And you can see how thin this iron coating is going on like this. The bronze and the copper and the brass, they all hide it a little bit better, and you might be able to get away with 2, but whenever I sponge it on or brush it on, I always recommend for the metal coating to go on with 3 coats. I think it just sells it better and will kind of look a little bit more authentic. We also don't run the risk of showing any of that white through that the texture paint brings. So I'm going to do 3 coats of the Iron B, and then we're going to go ahead and with our patina as well. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and zoom into going on to the 3rd coat here. So here is the 3rd coat, and again, we always want to do that last coat of metal coating while the metal coating is wet. This is a tip we can't put out often enough, and we have a lot of different metal coating videos. They're one of my favorites to work with, so that's why you kind of get so many of those videos. But you can see I put on a wet coat, and we're going to go in with our Tiffany green and spray that on nice and heavy. And metal coating with the patina is one of those things, you want it heavy enough, but you don't want it flooded. So something flat like this, I can kind of move some extra if I see it, and I am going a little heavy, so I'll kind of rotate a little off after camera. But you don't want it to be puddled. So if you've got like a sculpture of hands that could puddle water, you want to avoid those kind of things. Here we have it about an hour later, and you can see that patina is really starting to develop nice and fun. And of course, we need to seal it in. So the next day, and I normally recommend 48 hours, but we've been having kind of a dry climate. This could kick off a little bit faster, so I went ahead and rushed to 24 hours. You can see I'm spraying on that Everclear, and it does darken it up just a little bit, but it's really not that bad. Some of that's going to come back. Once again, the wetter you go on, the more it will go darker essentially. So I try and go a little bit thinner if you can. But here you have our final piece with the Primate, the texture paint, the metal coating Iron B, and the Tiffany green with our Everclear matte. So texture paint and the rest of the Sculpt Nouveau products are all available at www.sculptnouveau.com.